Hi, this is Dustine from Two Lucky Cats, and today I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite decorating techniques, and that's stenciling. Stenciling is a very versatile technique. You can use it to decorate paper, fabric, the walls, furniture, and there's different materials that you can use to create a stencil. And I want to explain to you some of the choices you have and what you need to think about to have a successful result. You can make stencils out of a variety of different materials. I've even made stencils out of manila folders, so it just depends on what the end result what you want the end result to be and what materials you have at hand. If you're going to use some kind of an opaque material to create your stencil, you're either going to have to trace a pattern onto the material, or you can copy it with your computer and then print it out onto some kind of a cardstock. And you want to use something. I mean, you can use a piece of paper if you want, but you're probably only going to be able to use it one time because it's not going to hold up to a lot of use. So if I'm going to have something that I might want to use more than once, I'll use something like that's a little heavier, like cardstock. Once you have your design onto the material that you're going to be using for your stencil, then you just use an X-Acto knife, and here you just are going to have to cut around the outline. You're not going to have details like this or the heart, so you just have to cut out an outline to create your stencil. When you use your X-Acto knife, make sure you have a sharp blade in it, or it's going to be real hard to cut it out. And the blades do dull pretty quickly. And make sure that you keep them away from your kids because they are very sharp. So this is the kind of result that you're going to get with this type of stencil here. It's just an outline, and you pretty much want to use it when you're going to make everything the same color, because if elements are closer together here, you are likely to get some of the paint, if you were doing other colors, the paint from here onto here. So you're going to make all your details the same color. The material that I like to use to create my stencils is something that has a transparency to it, some type of transparent film, like mylar or acetate, and you can also use vellum, and you can get that in a craft store. The reason I like to do that is because it is transparent, and you can make a couple different stencils, copy the design at least 2 times. Sometimes if it's a more complicated design, I have 3 different stencils. So you copy part of the design on one and part on the other. Now the thing you want to consider is how close the elements are, because you don't want color, say if you're using here like I did purple and green, you don't want the green to get onto the purple or the purple to get on to the green. So you want to have elements far enough apart that that's not going to happen. So, and also if you have some detail here, for example, you want to do the watering can first, and then when that dries a little, you put the stencil on, and you can do the heart. Plus, here I have the top and the handle and the spigot here, plus the flowers. And I did this again because I didn't want the flowers on the same stencil as the leaves, because the color will probably transfer. And this I did to make sure I can get the details in different colors. Now, let me just show you the difference here. This is the one that we did with the opaque material as a stencil, where everything is the same color and you don't have a lot of detail in it. And this is the one I did with the transparent stencil. So as you can see, when you do the first one, then you can just put it on top, line it right up there, because you can see it since it's transparent, and then you can just do the other elements, and they're going to go where they're supposed to be going. And then as you can see, these are in different colors. Here's another example that I can show you of the flower. And here's what I did here with this, with the opaque stencil. And again, let me point out, you want to make sure you have enough space. I cut this a little bit too short, and there's just a little bit of transfer of paint down here. So make sure you have enough space all around your design. So you're going to block out the area so the paint won't transfer somewhere where you don't want it to. So here is a solid green, and this looks nice. You know, you can use that, but here's what it looks like when I used 2 stencils. And I used one for the leaves and one for the flower. And I wasn't paying attention, and I cut this leaf out. But it doesn't really matter because this is far enough away that the paint didn't transfer. So I used this to do that part of the design. And then again, since it's transparent, I can just line it right up there and do the stem and the leaf. And as you can see, the stem is real close here to the petals. So if I would have tried to use one stencil and do different colors here, I'm sure the purple and the green would mix here on the stem and the leaves. Sometimes, even though this was a simple design here, with the heart with a flower in it, with the opaque, the only thing that I could do, elements that I could do was the heart, and then I could kind of line it up here so I could put the flower on it, but it would be really hard to put the center in it, you know, because you'd be moving it all over the place trying to figure out exactly where the center is. So when you use the film for the stencil, you can do the heart, then line it up here and put the flower in it, and then just line it up again and put the center of the flower in there. There are different ways that you can apply paint when you're using a stencil. For example, you can use a stencil brush like this. I like to get a more solid application of color on my stencils, but if you don't want to have such a solid application, you can just put the paint in a tray and then get some of the paint off on a paper towel. You can also use a sponge stencil brush, and you can do the same thing. Take some of the paint off when you apply the paint to the surface of the stencil. Another thing that I've used is I've just cut up a small piece of sponge and sponged the paint over a stencil. Now, if you have, the other thing you can do is you can also use freezer paper to create a stencil. If you're going to use freezer paper and you're going to use it with some kind of a paint, you might only get maybe 1 to 3 uses out of it. But the good thing about freezer paper is it has a thin layer of wax on the back. So you just iron it on either to the paper or the fabric on a low setting of your iron, and it'll hold the stencil down. If you're going to use some other type of stencil and it's bigger, it has a lot of detail, and you want all the detail to stay flat, you can always spray the back of the stencil with something like this. It's a temporary adhesive which will hold the stencil in place. I hope you enjoyed learning something about the technique of stenciling, and I hope you come back and do the project that I've designed and use the stencils that I've created. Come back and see us a lot. I always have a new project here for you to do at Two Lucky Cats.